Welcome back. So in this video, I'm going to be talking through my experience with a couple of foundation slash base products that I've tried recently. A lot of them have been featured on my channel already. Some of them are samples that I was curious about to compare against as well, because I'm kind of on the market for something that's more of a summer shade. A lot of the things in my collection were matching my winter shade slash maybe even lean light, and now there's kind of a gap in my collection of something that's more not on the luminous side, so something more satin, maybe even matte feeling, and then also something that's more on the deeper side of my range of complexions. So I've been looking out for that, and things that I have tried recently include the Nars Light Reflecting Foundation, the Makeup Forever Reboot, the LYS Foundation, the Kosas Revealer Foundation, the Makeup Forever HD Foundation, the Rose Ink Tinted Serum, the Rare Beauty Tinted Moisturizer, and the Salt New York Sneaky Balm. And I will go ahead and include swatches of pretty much all of these. I'll link any ones that have corresponding more in-depth videos, and I will also be listing all of the prices and shades that I have tried slash used down below. And then for ones that I do still have in my collection, I'll go ahead and swatch them all by side just for those of you who are similar skin tones to me. So this is all one big cumulative reference video in terms of these new launches. I guess I'll kind of go in order of sheerest to most coverage, because that kind of allows me to group things that are most similar next to each other, I think. So I'll start with the Salt New York's Sneaky Balm. I have done an in-depth video on this. It was not quite up to my expectations simply because it left too much of a dewy feeling layer over my skin after everything was applied and settled in. It is very, very sheer, very, very luminous. I find that if I just use my fingers or a sponge and pick up a tiny bit and plop that here or there, it creates a very indeed sneaky, super, super light tint all over. You can kind of use this as a foundation all over your face. I personally don't enjoy that because, like I said, it leaves too much of a feeling all over for my preference. But if you're more dry skin, maybe that's something that you would be drawn towards. It is very light. I also feel like if I pick up too much of the product at once, it can potentially highlight areas of textures more than I would like. But as long as I use the tiniest bit, it is almost invisible. I will admit I don't reach for it that often. Though the colors are very neutral in their collection, so I do find that they match me pretty well. So at least there's that. Moving on, the next in terms of coverage that I tried would be the Rose Ink Tinted Serum. So I think Rose Ink, I haven't tried that much from their brand, but they've done pretty well for themselves. They kind of have as far as influencer or celebrity started brands go, they're kind of up there a little in terms of perceived quality. They are also definitely up there in terms of price, and that is one of the things that kind of makes me hesitant about this product. I will say I do quite like it a lot. It feels really, really nice, and if you're looking for something that's definitely in that light to sheer range, this is quite pleasant. I find that the coverage is a little bit less than MAC Face and Body, but definitely more than the Glossier Skin Tint, so somewhere in that range, most definitely in sheer. What I will say though is that this gives a much more satin finish. It gives a more blurred finish than say the MAC Face and Body, which is very much luminous. Similarly to that though, I find that this formula is very thin, and because it's in this serum with the beads of pigment, I find that I can't really get a good application with a sponge, which is personally my favorite way of applying most base products. If I use a sponge, it kind of just mashes up kind of weird. It'll like soak up the serum, and there'll just be these like, it's just like not great, and like a lot of the pigment gets soaked into the sponge. I definitely find that working at it with your fingers, kind of blending that serum and the pigment together between your fingers or between your skin, makes a big difference in how it applies. It does have a little bit of a like velvety effect is what I found. I think it wears really, really nicely, and it feels super comfortable on the skin. It basically feels like nothing, like you're just wearing a serum or something. It's not like the juiciest, most dewy Complextures product, which I kind of like. I think it's definitely more down the road, and I think it would work well for a lot of different skin types because of that. But I was definitely impressed with this formula. The only thing that kind of holds me back from wanting to buy it is that it is quite expensive for what it is. And I might pick it up in a sale at a future date. Okay, next up would be probably the Rare Beauty Tinted Moisturizer. In my video where I kind of demo the product more thoroughly, I described it as a Goldilocks of light coverage makeup products, of light coverage based products, and I do still rather stand by that. I find the formula to be very much just like a moisturizer that happens to have tint. I like to use the MAC Face and Body as kind of a like bouncing board of how other products kind of match up against it, because I do feel like a lot of people have tried a lot of MAC products for one, understand their color range, and I think the MAC Face and Body was one of the, like, long before sheer light coverage products were a trend, like this already existed. So I kind of hold that as like a staple in my head. In any case, I think that the Rare Beauty provides similar / maybe like a bit higher coverage than the MAC Face and Body. That being said though, the MAC Face and Body has a big range because it can be sheer or built up, whereas the Rare Beauty Tinted Moisturizer kind of just has like about 1 to 2 layers that I find I can really build up towards. I can kind of wear it sheer out, but otherwise it's kind of just like a solid light coverage when I wear it. I find it to be like a nice, very juicy gel texture. It gives a good luminosity, but it's not overly dewy. It definitely like sinks into the skin. It feels super lightweight and like thin, but moisturized effect, where I think that is pretty distinct from leaving a thin but like dewy, luminous look. At least in this day and age, it's just like feels very, very skin-like to me. It's not like a super runny formula. It's not very like thick and heavy. It's just kind of like this nice bouncy moisturizer feeling. I am a big fan of this tinted moisturizer, and I think that this one would kind of work for a lot of people, and it's definitely one of those products that's easy to slap on with your hands, with a sponge, with a brush. It's just like very malleable, so I would be pretty quick to recommend it. I also think that the price point is like very reasonable on this one. After that, I want to talk about the Makeup Forever Reboot foundation, and I love this foundation. I actually wanted to include like more samples of various products I wanted to try. For example, I've been really wanting to try the Shiseido Synchro Skin line, but I just like went to a couple different stores and they like didn't carry samples of it in store, so I was like, do I really want to buy the whole bottle just to try it out? I don't know. And there were a couple of other things I wanted to try, but again, like they were harder to get my hands on. But after I tried this Makeup Forever Reboot foundation, I was kind of like, I think I'll stop my search because I think this is the one I want to buy. So this foundation is just like very skin-like, very comfortable. It's what I'm wearing on right now. I think it can be sheared out, but similar to the Rare Beauty one, it'll give like one kind of consistent amount of coverage if you apply like 1 pump's worth, and if you build up beyond that, like it won't build that much more, and So it's just like not the most buildable formula, but I don't necessarily need that from something that I want a more like lightweight look out of. It feels super, super thin. It doesn't really pick up on my dry patches unless I'm having a pretty bad day in terms of skin. So those are like two things that are very important to me. I find it to give me like a healthy look to my skin, but it truly like, it feels like nothing. It doesn't give any like extra glow, any extra luminosity. I would describe the finish as very much like natural, super skin-like, and it'll just kind of like adopt whatever skincare you have underneath. So I'm a huge, huge fan of that, especially for like what I want from my summer product, because I don't want anything too dewy, which I kind of have a surplus in my collection, because, you know, I get more oily and sweaty during the summer, and I don't need my skincare product to like, or my makeup to make up for that for me. It'll happen naturally on its own. If anything, I want something that's like the most skin-like it can be. My skin is quite sensitive, so anything that's like matte, is potentially going to dry me up, but this is like the perfect finish. I find this to be like, if you like how skin-like and you like about the coverage that MAC Face and Body gives, this is really, really similar. I find just like less dewy, and I find that this formula I can apply with a beauty blender, whereas the MAC Face and Body is one of those few formulas that I think works better with hands or brushes. It gets a little too sheared out even for my preferences if I use a beauty blender. But this Reboot, I slap it on and it just looks so nice. For me and like how my preferences in terms of finish and how I like to apply, i.e. with a beauty blender, it just like fits everything I could really want. For me, the color range of this is not that great. I used to always love, I think, the shade Y225, which was a more like neutral yellowish shade for most of my understanding with Makeup Forever. However, in this Reboot line, it's like way more orange, but I have since gotten a little tanner. This shade is like too dark for me in the winter, but I've gotten a little tanner, so it's actually my perfect like dead on match for a summer shade. So I'm stoked. It like matches me perfectly. It's everything I've wanted. Anyways, I'm raving about it because it works perfectly for me. This description may or may not be what you want. Moving on. So I also tried out a sample of the LYS foundation, and I was actually a lot more impressed than I thought I would be. And this foundation is like very affordable in terms of things that Sephora carries. It's actually kind of reminiscent of the Makeup Forever Reboot, just definitely with like a good handful of more coverage. I would describe the coverage as very buildable to medium. It is very smooth. It's like nice and luminous, but also feels very, very thin and skin-like. It is more luminous than the Reboot for sure, but it's not anything like super like juicy or glassy or anything like that. I was a big fan. I just couldn't really find a good shade match for me in this range, but otherwise I think I would definitely be a fan given that I like the formulation and it's a really good price. Let's go over, I think the Kosas and the Nars Light Reflecting are very, very similar in terms of amount of coverage and even like how they feel and perform. So both the Light Reflecting and the Revealer are definitely medium coverage foundations. They are both very much a luminous formula. They are very plush, which is a very like specific thing in my head where like the formula has a very gel-like quality to it, and as you blend it out, it kind of like adds a lot of bounce and glow to your skin as you're spreading it out. It like will set down to feel thin and lightweight, but as you're kind of blending it in, it gives a little bit more like if you were using a very like thick gel-like serum on your face, it kind of gives that sort of effect as opposed to like some some foundations apply really thin, like a lightweight moisturizer that sinks in really quickly. This is more like something that like kind of will glide over. That's kind of what I mean by a plush formula. The Nars light reflecting foundation does not have any scent, and their line runs a hint more pink for me. I also find it's not drying by any means, but it can catch and emphasize my dry patches, which I really don't like that. I find that when I look at it up close, I don't always love how it sits. It kind of depends day to day on how my skin is when I apply the Nars light reflecting one, and it borders on a little bit too luminous for my preferences. I think it looks really pretty from afar. Whenever I wear this, I'll like look at myself in the mirror and I think, wow, I do look healthy and I do look great. But when I look up too close, I'm like not super pleased. I kind of feel like I can see some flakiness, some breaking apart, like, and just like a little bit too much like oiliness after my own skin oils kind of peek through and mesh with it. But I find it so similar to the Kosas one in terms of like everything that it can provide in terms of coverage and finish and feeling during application. But I just like how the Kosas one sits better for me, because it doesn't pick up on the dry patches nearly as much. They have a few shades that run a little on the olive side, and those work really nicely for me. I've been happy with the shade that I have. It was a little too dark at first, but I've tanned a little, so now it works great. I find it wears a little bit nicer throughout the day in that basically like about an hour and a half after I've applied this, that's exactly how it looks for the entire rest of the day. It'll just like slowly fade if anything, but it won't break apart. It won't like emphasize anything or like have anything kind of like crumble apart on my face throughout the day. It just looks like, and I think it looks the best. It looks basically about an hour, you know, after your skin kind of like mixes all together. So that's very promising. What else? Oh, the only thing is, it doesn't smell great in my opinion. It smells very strongly. Okay, and then finally amongst the ones that I have tried recently is the Makeup Forever HD Skin Foundation, and is the new and improved version of the forever acclaimed Makeup Forever Ultra HD, whatever. They've had a couple iterations. With the Makeup Forever HD Skin Foundation, I think this is a good example of one that's really not plush at all. The formula, when you first pump it out, does have that like, you know, a bit of body to it. It's not runny, it's not like gel-like, it's not moisturizer-like. It's very much a traditional like foundation. However, as you spread it out, because it becomes very thin on the skin, it kind of wants to like set down pretty much at once. So there's kind of that as an example in contrast to what I mean by a plush formulation. It kind of wants to thin itself out as quick as possible. And also this foundation has no scent, and it's very much a solid medium coverage, buildable to a full coverage, I think. I found this to be, you know, there's pros and cons of this foundation. I find the first time I applied it, I kind of just put it on like any other willy-nilly foundation and just kind of slapped it on all over, and it definitely clung to things way more than I would have liked. The next day I worked in smaller sections, putting on much thinner layers, and I really liked how my skin looked that day. In fact, it looked very perfected. It looked rather matte, which was kind of new to me. It worked really well throughout the day. It held up really impressively. So I think that this is definitely something that I can get to work for me and my skin type. I think that it like kind of self-sets, so there's no really need to powder it. When I did apply the first day and kind of just slapped it on, I found it to be a bit drying. The product itself just kind of like stuck out of my skin and made my skin look kind of sad. So if you're someone who is prone to dry skin, I would definitely prep your skin accordingly for this product. But if you want something that wears really well and is on that matte or finish, then this is something that definitely works well. It is super, well, when I apply it super thin, it feels super thin on the skin, and I really like it that way. My qualms with this one are that they tossed up the shades and they are kind of weird to me now. So I went in store and swatched a couple shades, and initially I thought I should just go with the color that they recommend for anyone that was Y225, which I believe they recommend the shade 1Y08, and that is like a super peachy orangey shade now. So I went with 1N10 instead, which is much more neutral. I don't know, I think it's a little confusing, the new shade range. 110N works well for me. It's too light for me right now, but it's a perfect winter shade. I really like that you can buy like a mini bottle for a significantly cheaper price. I think that's a really awesome option that I feel like more foundation should have. Just because you never really know how much you're gonna like it at first, but then if you do know that this is like a holy grail formula for you, you can go ahead and buy the whole full size bottle as much as you like. So that kind of wraps up my little foundation overview. Overall, I think some of these will work for some people more than others. I thought about ranking them. Doesn't really make sense, but I will tell you what my standouts are. I think it's the Reboot. That's out of all of these, I think I'm going to repurchase or go ahead and allow myself to purchase, with all the knowledge that I have now, a full-size bottle of that. I think it works very well for me and what I'm looking for. The Rose Ink Tinted Serum I was very impressed with, and the LYS formula I was also very impressed with. So I will kind of keep my eye out for those formulations in the future. Oh, and the Rare Beauty Tinted Moisturizer, which I already have. These are all probably my running favorites. Man, I think I'm listing too many favorites, but I also really like the Kosas one. I just think that it's very luminous and has a strong scent, so that might not be for everyone. I hope that this was helpful. I tried to kind of pack as much information about these as I could, but also kind of keep it categorized in like things that would be relevant. Aside from the Makeup Forever HD, they were all like very much luminous and like kind of going with a certain trend right now. So I hope that kind of helps you distinguish if there are any in here that you wanted over the others. I am still very much excited by skin products. I don't know why, I just have been really liking trying them out. So definitely keep an eye out for more, and thanks for watching.